Since its very invention, the car has incited the wildest passions in the hearts of men. Ettore Bugatti, the passionate engineer from Milan who in 1903 chose Alsace as his new homeland, created a fabulous epic that lasted nearly half a century. The Bugattis gave a dream to the whole world. Even 60 years after their departure, the Bugatti myth lives on. It all started in Milan. Carlo Bugatti, who was famed for his artistic wood carvings, had two sons. His first son, Rembrandt, became a sculptor of animal statues. The second son, Ettore, studied at the Art Academy in Milan before trying his luck in the automobile sector. An industrialist of Alsace, Baron de Dietrich, took note of him, and Ettore left Italy with his young wife Barbara and settled in Niederbronn with de Dietrich. The collaboration, however, did not last long, as Ettore was already dreaming of the racing car. So he got together with Matisse in Strasbourg to build the Bugatti Hermès. However, this relationship soon broke up too. Ettore was then employed by the company Deutz in Cologne. He had concluded a very advantageous contract, which allowed him to build his own car without having to present any accounts to Deutz. In 1909, he then proceeded in building a car in his own cellar, which was considered to be his first fully independent creation. In the year in which Barbara gave birth to his third child, a boy named Jean, he left Cologne and settled in Molsheim. By this time, Ettore had developed a light car with a high-performance motor. Two of his little cars were entered for the Grand Prix in Le Mans. In contrast to the hopes of his competitors with their Fiats with 14-litre capacities, his cars, whose motors had a capacity of 1400 cc's, proved to be extremely fast and stood up against the Fiats. It was a revelation for the whole press. But the car was so small, and since the regulations prescribed a spare wheel, the mechanic held it tight for the whole duration of the race while the driver drove. Ettore built his first cars in Molsheim in an old dye works. They were an enormous success. By the time the First World War broke out in 1914, he had become friends with personalities of that time, such as the French aviator Roland Garros, to whom he sold the famous Black Bess. He knew what the war would mean for him, so he covered the motors in grease before burying them in the courtyard of the factory and moved to Italy. In 1919, after the war, Bugatti moved back to Molsheim, where by a miracle his factory had survived undamaged. There then began the happiest time in the life of Ettore Bugatti and his family. He received a flood of orders. In 1920, at the Brescia Grand Prix, Bugatti entered 5 cars, which took the first 5 places. Even today, the Brescias are among the most sought-after collector's items. But the best known of all his cars is the Bugatti 35 and its derivatives, such as the 37, driven here by Caroline Bugatti, Ettore's granddaughter. Bugatti brought into being the first race organization. He had an enormous tent erected for the drivers with several rooms, which had running water and all the facilities that could be desired. 4 wagons from Molsheim and 4 large lorries transported the necessary material. His cars were frequently purchased by wealthy private persons. Some of these even won Grand Prix races, such as Madame Unique and Fifi et Enclat, an industrialist from Normandy who won the Reims Grand Prix. In 1929, for the Monaco Grand Prix, he designed a real monster with 4 drive wheels. In all, the Bugattis drove to more than 2,000 victories, in spite of competitors like Alfa Romeo, Mercedes and Fiat. Whether it was Mercedes, Alfa Romeo or Fiat, providing the competition at the time, none of these designers built more than 5 cars, whereas he built 700 and sold them too. Ettore received his customers in Molsheim in Château Saint-Jean and allowed them to visit the factory. Each car was unique. He provided accommodation for his customers in Molsheim in a hotel specially built for them. From 1920 to 1935, Bugatti's reputation had made him into a noble personality who was able to dedicate himself completely to his passion for horses. It was this passion which inspired him to place the horseshoe on the radiator of his car. Apparently he lived very well in it's an Italian feudal estate, isn't it? These little family scenes, filmed with his daughter Lydia, bear witness to the happiness of those crazy years. It was in this period that he began the construction of the Royale Type 41. It was a car built for crowned heads. With the onset of the global financial crisis of 1929, this car, with never-before-seen dimensions and with a 12-litre motor, found no buyers. The King of Morocco, Mohammed V, and his friend, the King of Spain, showed no reaction at all. Only 6 Royales were built. They continue to be absolutely roadworthy on all 5 continents. Each is worth around 15 million euros. Like the Coupé Napoleon, which is exhibited in the museum in Mulhouse. This left Bugatti sitting on about 20 Royale motors. Then he had the idea of building rail buses. Thanks to the support of a great head of state, he was able to win some important orders. He even set a world speed record on rail. Ettore moved to Paris, where he opened a sales office for his cars, while at the same time transferring the responsibility for the factory in Molsheim to his son Jean. Jean proved himself not only to be competent but also resourceful. He converted the factory, rationalizing working methods so that cars could be designed on a semi-mass production basis. Jean also demonstrated himself to be a natural leader who knew every part of the factory inside out. His ability to speak the Alsatian language perfectly allowed him to remain in communication with the unions during the strike of 1936. Jean even managed to negotiate the possibility of doing overtime so that work could be done on the famous Bugatti street cruiser, which in 1937 took part in the famous 24-hour Le Mans race, which it also won. A victory which was to be repeated 2 years later in 1939 with the team Véran and Vimille as the Second World War approached. In 1939 came the catastrophe. Jean, the beloved and talented son, died in a training run in August. Ettore had to survive difficult tests during the war. The Germans confiscated the factory to build amphibian vehicles there. The Luftwaffe also got involved, attracted by the technological capital of the factory. After the war, Ettore got into financial difficulties for the first time. Following the death of his first wife Barbara, he married Geneviève Delsuze. The 2 children, Thérèse and Michel, are the parents of Emmanuel and Caroline Bugatti. Winning the Grand Prix des Prisonniers in Paris was to be his last success. However, Ettore had long had a passion for boats. In 1937, he had set a world water speed record on the Seine of over 133 kilometers per hour. In spite of his money problems, he purchased a boatyard in the neighborhood of Paris in order to keep a fantastic sailing yacht that he had recently acquired there. This passion was to be his death. After Ettore's death in August 1947, his son Roland took on the construction of a new racing car, the 251. The 251, driven by Maurice Trintignant, failed at the Reims Grand Prix in 1956. Then Roland threw in the towel. The technical vision of Bugatti was more the vision of an artist than the vision of a mechanic. As well as this, there are all the water and air travel inventions. In the final analysis, it is this aspect of the innovation which I find marvelous in every sense of the word. It is marvelous on the level of imagination. Quite simply, marvelous.